All right, today we're going to talk about ADHD. Now, it's a term you hear all the time, but the reality behind that label, it's complex, it's often really misunderstood, and honestly, it's way more interesting than you probably think. So, let's dive in and piece this puzzle together. Let's start with a feeling, something maybe you can relate to. It's that moment where your mind is just buzzing with 1,000 thoughts, but none of them seem to connect to the go button. You know what you have to do, that deadline is practically screaming at you, but it feels like there's this invisible wall between wanting to do it and actually doing it. And that feeling, that paralysis, it's not a choice. For a lot of people with ADHD, it's a core part of their daily experience. And that feeling brings us to the question that changes everything. Is it just laziness, a lack of willpower, a personal failing? Or is there something else going on entirely? Something different about the way the brain is actually wired? How you answer that question is the difference between seeing a character flaw and understanding a completely unique way of thinking. Okay, so to really get what ADHD is today, we have to look back at where the whole idea even came from. And believe me, it's a story that's been unfolding for more than 200 years. This timeline really tells a powerful story, doesn't it? I mean, look at how the language changes. We go from judgmental phrases like a defect of moral control way back in 1902 to something a little more scientific, like minimal brain dysfunction in the 60s. It's a journey from blame to biology. And that brings us to the modern definition. Now, those first two words are absolutely key: neurodevelopmental disorder. What that does is it firmly places the origins of ADHD in the way the brain grows and wires itself from a very, very early age. And it's only considered a disorder when these traits really get in the way of a person's life.
So, look, a diagnosis isn't about being a little forgetful or fidgety sometimes. I mean, we all have those days, right? To get a clinical diagnosis, it has to be a persistent pattern of these behaviors, enough of them to cause real, consistent problems in multiple parts of your life, like at school, at work, and in your relationships.
Now, check out this number: 70 to 80%. That is the estimated heritability of ADHD. To give you some perspective, that means it's a trait that's more heritable than height. So what does that tell you? It's telling us loud and clear, genetics play a massive role here. This isn't about bad parenting or a lack of willpower. It's deeply biological, and it often runs in families.
So we've covered the what, the history, the symptoms. But what about the why? Why does this happen? Well, to figure that out, we need to pop the hood and take a look at the brain's command center. And this is the core concept you need to know: executive function. The easiest way to think about it is like the CEO of your brain. It's sitting up there in the frontal lobe, and while it's not doing every little job itself, it's the one directing all the traffic, making sure things run smoothly and that projects actually get done on time. And this is what that CEO is juggling all day long. Things like managing your time, organizing what you have to do, holding information in your head, even regulating your emotions and stopping you from saying the first thing that pops into your head. So you can imagine, right? If that whole management system is a little off kilter, that's when you start seeing all those symptoms we just talked about.
In this picture, it's the perfect snapshot of that in real life. You know, we might look at this and just think, oh, that kid's just daydreaming, not paying attention. But what's often really happening under the surface is a brain that's struggling with a really fundamental management task, filtering out all the noise in the room to focus on the one important signal, the teacher's voice.
But here's where it gets really interesting. This kind of brain wiring, well, it's not just a simple story about problems. It's really like a coin with two totally different sides. One with some pretty big challenges, and the other with some truly surprising strengths.
On one side of that coin, yeah, the data on the challenges is really clear. Higher risks in a lot of areas of life. But then you flip it over and you see this fascinating pattern. That same impulsivity that can get you into trouble, it can also fuel the risk-taking courage you need to launch a new business. That distractibility that makes it hard to focus on a spreadsheet, it can also lead to the kind of creative, outside-the-box thinking that leads to breakthroughs.
And this is so important to get. ADHD almost never shows up to the party alone. I mean, think about it. If you are constantly fighting to make your brain fit into a world that just wasn't built for it, that's exhausting. It takes a huge toll. And that's a big reason why you see these dramatically higher rates of other conditions like depression and anxiety right alongside it.
So with this whole complex picture, these serious challenges on one hand and these unique strengths on the other, some scientists are starting to ask a pretty radical question, a question that flips the whole script on ADHD.
And this quote right here from Dr. Annie Swanepoel, it really gets to the heart of this big shift in thinking. It's part of a movement called neurodiversity, which basically challenges us to stop automatically calling brain differences deficits, and instead to see them as just natural variations in how humans are wired, kind of like being left-handed or right-handed.
So what this does is it completely reframes the goal, right? It's not about trying to cure or fix a brain. It's about figuring out how to create environments where that particular brain can thrive. It's about building a better garden, not trying to change the flowers.
And that leads to an even bigger question. If these traits can be so challenging in our modern 9-to-5 world, why are they still so common in our gene pool? Why didn't evolution just get rid of them? Well, the evolutionary perspective offers a really cool and powerful answer.
Just picture it. You're in a hunter-gatherer tribe, okay? The person who's constantly scanning the horizon, whose head whips around at every snapped twig, they're not distracted. They're the one who spots the lion first, the one who impulsively decides to explore over the next hill. They might be the one who finds a new source of water for the whole group. You see? In that world, those traits aren't problems. They're superpowers. They're what keeps everyone alive.
And that leaves us with this final question that kind of reframes the whole conversation. Is the ADHD brain a bug in our modern, structured world? Or is it a feature, an evolutionary echo of a different time with skills that we might still need? It's a question that really makes you think, doesn't it? It pushes us to look past the label and to start seeing the incredible potential that exists in all the different ways a mind can work.